Mental health doesn't matter what your age, gender or sexuality is, it can come at any time. It can come upon anyone and it has the ability to destroy lives. Mental health comes in many forms, but the main ones being anxiety and depression within society. Everyone can struggle with their mental health. However, statistics prove that it tends to be men more. It is reported that 1 in 8 men in the UK suffer from a common mental illness, these being depression, anxiety, OCD and panic disorder. However, from a study from the Office of National Statistics found that men were 3 times more likely to commit suicide over women. As well as this, Men's Health Forum found that 13 men commit suicide in the UK every day. These are worrying statistics. I want to find out why this occurs and why there is a stigma surrounding men's mental health and also the effect it has on men. To begin with, it's important to understand what is meant by having a mental illness. The American Psychiatric Association describes it as changes in emotion, thinking or behaviour, or a combination of these. There are many reasons why men may develop a mental health issue. On their website, Mental Health America describes it as environmental stresses, genetic factors, biochemical imbalances, or a combination of these. For men, some of these reasons may occur from their personal lives, such as
past trauma, family and or relationship issues, money issues, and work problems.
Any of these, or a combination of these, can lead men feeling immense hopelessness, withdrawal, and a shutdown of normal activity. According to WHO in 2018, they also suggest that poor mental health can be attributed to
rapid social change, stressful work conditions, gender or sexual discrimination, social exclusion, and unhealthy lifestyle.
From a young age, men are taught that in society, showing emotion is a sign of weakness and that there are rules in which it means to be a man. As well as this, mental health foundations say that men are expected to be breadwinners and to be strong, dominant and in control. With these societal rules in place, men feel as though they can't express how they feel with other people. This is because they will feel as though they look weak, so they must evade talking about their problems. To discuss this further, here are my guests' opinions on men's mental health. Do they feel there is a stigma surrounding men's mental health, and why do they feel that men can't express their emotions properly? Do you feel that there is a stigma surrounding men's mental health?
Stigma usually is like a negative thing. I feel like it perhaps has a history of a negative connotation with mental health, but it's starting to lose that stigma, I feel. The more it's being talked about, the more it's being sort of pushed into the mainstream.
We don't come out as much as anybody else does, and it's quite a big problem for men overall. Like, there's many men that haven't come out at all about their mental health.
Whenever you usually hear about mental health with men, there's always the response of like just having to deal with it or suck it up and all that stuff, because it is sort of the thing where like you don't really express much emotion as a man.
A lot of men don't feel like they can speak up about mental health, and I think that's because there is a stigma around it. I think that's been built in to our generation, our society.
I think there is, but I do believe that it's not as bad as what it used to be. I think it's getting less and less, which is a good thing.
I still think there is, yeah. And it's difficult to know what's real, because I think there is a shift in culture where people are much more open to hearing about it and are more conscious of it, and we talk about it in general terms a lot more. But when you talk to individuals that are struggling, it's still very difficult for them to talk about it. So that there may be a difference between how we feel about it culturally and how the person might feel about it individually. And interestingly, if you speak to them, they would more than happily, generally speaking, support a friend, but still know and feel that it's very difficult to reach out for support themselves. And I think that's the same for men and women, I think.
Why do you feel men can't express their emotions?
I think because we just aren't shown how. I feel like there's just generations of men who were told to suck it up, keep your chin up, don't express what you're feeling. So, when was the last time you saw your dad cry? When was the last time you saw your uncle cry? Like, you're just not shown that it's fine.
we're meant to be macho, we're meant to be manly, we're meant to be the dominant figure within genders, I guess you'd say. So male are more dominant than female within society, as science says. But we need to. That's the reason why I think we're more closed off and more not aware of opening up to doctors or psychiatrists or all those sorts of helplines that we can get.
To be fair, a lot of it probably does come from a bit of misogyny. I don't know if that's a thing I can talk a lot about personally, but usually when you do think of like crying or showing emotion, it's societally seen as something more feminine, I guess. So if you see lads starting to cry or do something like that, people tend not to be the biggest fan of it, because there are people who just see men have to be masculine, women have to be feminine, and crying, for whatever reason, despite being something completely human, isn't really seen as masculine.
Well, it goes back generations, you know. Toxic masculinity, because if you're not masculine, if you're not a man, you aren't a man. That's what I think's been built into our society. So men feel like when they do have depression or suicidal thoughts, that then they're weak. They shouldn't talk about it.
There's shame involved in. Feels like you're admitting something bad, and so that can be a barrier to reaching out for support, which means that you're more likely to be isolated with it and be less supported when you're going through a difficult time. Could be about a person's identity and about wanting to be seen as strong and capable. Perhaps maybe people can feel it, or men maybe feel it's a sign of weakness, perhaps, to talk about emotions. I mean, I think that does change, and of course men do speak about their emotions, but I wonder whether there are more barriers for them to be reaching out. And, so family constraints, cultural constraints, how supportive friends are, how supportive all those people around them are, whether it's within university or workplace. I think there's lots about their contacts and environment that can limit or even allow what they can and can't talk about.
Do you feel like men suffer more from mental health than women?
I don't feel like more, because there's definitely you can't write off women's mental health as less or more. I don't think that's fair. But I feel like perhaps it's sort of more present, a talking point, women's mental health, or has been for perhaps longer, whereas men are still sort of finding the path of how to deal and talk about mental health.
I think that we do suffer more from mental health issues because it just shows within the statistics, really, because men have a much higher suicidal rate due to mental health issues than women do.
They are equal, but I imagine women recover more from mental health issues because, like I said, there is a stigma around it, and a lot of men aren't pushed or asked to go and talk about it, whereas women are.
I think men tend to take their work issues home, whereas I don't think women do, So I think men let the work stress get to them more than what a woman does.
Difficult to say, but I think if getting access to support means decreased suffering and men find it harder to access support, then maybe they will struggle to ease their suffering more. So I guess what I'm unsure about is I would think that suffering may come from different angles, but maybe suffering is comparable, but it's that ease of suffering and support that might be harder to gain if there is greater stigma.
Why do you think most men stay silent when dealing with a mental health issue?
Genuinely because they're not sure how people will react. I feel like there's certainly a fear of, if I tell someone this, if I tell them like how I am feeling, are they just going to be like, whoa, I can't, I'm not here for that, like find someone else.
Women are more open about sharing their feelings, however men are more closed off about sharing their feelings, I think, because I used to be a lot closed off than I wanted to be, because I wanted to be more open, but I thought if I opened up, I don't know what would happen, if I'd get laughed at, if I'd get joked about, if I'd just be ignored.
It is a really rough thing to come out with to anyone or to talk about, because just like actively say like you've had a moment of weakness or share a moment of weakness with someone else is really, really hard, and it takes a lot of time, or sometimes you just can't get to a point where you can actually share that with someone.
For me, the environment I grew up in, you never saw my dad struggling with anything like that. We were taught to be, you know, the man of the house. You've got to be the strong one, the tough one, and showing any kind of weakness, well, pull your socks up, come on, you'll be all right, and that kind of thing.
There's that sense of maybe strength and robustness. I think if there's a bit of shame about struggle, is there a feeling of being weak? But certainly it can be very difficult if we're talking to men clients. Quite often they won't have spoken to friends or family about it. Quite often the only person that will be aware of what's going on is the counsellor.
So what do you think needs to be done more to try and help men? Do you think, or mental health in general, do you think it's more of an education? Do you think it's help that's given? Do you think it's a societal change? What do you think?
Just going to be a time thing. I think if you look at where we are now compared to sort of 50, 60 years ago, you can see a clear change. But I think it's going to take 2 or 3 more generations of sort of people who are thinking like we are at the minute about it to truly get everything to a place where it's more of a talking point. It's not this big taboo subject.
Within school, I can wholeheartedly say I did not get taught anything about anxiety or mental health or how to help myself be better within my mental state and my thoughts that I might have.
I think education is definitely something that needs to be focused on, especially with mental health in general. I think as much as education is going to help, people aren't going to take it seriously, or they are going to fight back against having that sort of thing taught. When something that society is against starts being taught in schools, there is always pushback against it. And if you want to avoid that pushback, then there needs to be a change to society.
I've noticed on TV now there's more adverts aimed towards people with mental health to get them talking about it. But half of them that you see, well, no, more than half, I'd say at least 80% of the adverts you see are aimed towards women, and that small fraction are aimed towards men. So I think we need a more balanced, a more balanced viewpoint. So we need the same amount of commercials for men and women. I think there just needs to be a radical shake-up to make men feel more at ease to talk about it and more accepted to be able to talk about it.
You start a job now and one of the first questions you get asked is how's your mental well-being, which I do think is a good thing. I really do. Having suffered my son some years ago, I get asked if I'm fit for work, and I'm all for it, if I'm honest with you. I think it's a good thing, and it is becoming, obviously the stigma's going as well, you know what I mean, and which I think is fantastic.
I think it's more of what we're already doing. I think starting from a really young age, and I know it's there in schools. I know there's a lot more talk about mental health in schools. A lot of schools now have got counselling teams that come in, and all this focus on social and personal education. I think more of that. I think that's really important. It's about growing up and understanding that everybody has issues and everybody struggles at some point in their life. That it's not unusual to struggle. It's actually quite normal. Making sure it's normal to talk about it. Again, reassuring about confidentiality, because even though it might be quite normal and acceptable, it's still really important to know that you've got that confidentiality if you need it. And then going on into the workplace, it's really important to feel that it's okay to talk about it.
When it comes to men's mental health, it can sometimes be extremely difficult to tell if someone's struggling, especially if they aren't showing any warning signs. However, you may be able to tell the small warning signs that they give out from the way that they act and behave. From an article written in 2011, Ogroditchuk and Olif say that men's behaviour can change and can come in the form of anger, hostile, aggression, abusive behaviour, risk-taking, substance abuse and escaping behaviour such as over-involvement in work. Without proper care and treatment, these issues can quickly escalate and make someone's mental well-being worse. This can eventually lead to more harm, mentally, but also physically. It's important to understand the consequences of what can happen if these problems aren't talked about. It can lead to negative consequences like poor physical health, job-related issues, loss or disconnection with friends and family, turn to substance abuse, hospitalisation, and what could be classed as a last resort, suicide. So in the past, have you had any experiences surrounding mental health?
I've certainly, I think, struggled with anxiety. Definitely anxiety, more in kind of a sort of social anxiety, like being, having to like psych myself up just to go and talk to someone, or like being genuinely full of just pure fear because I had to go and walk into a shop and I knew I had to return an item or something.
I have extreme anxiety, which gives me panic attacks at random times, but I haven't had it in a few months, which is good. I have sometimes get intrusive thoughts, which I have to battle daily, but I know I have my triggers, which I try and avoid.
I am medically classed as I've got anxiety and I've got chronic depression as well, and I got diagnosed with those fairly recently, around the first year of college. So I've had those for a bit.
When I was in high school, my parents got divorced, and it became rather nasty. Not on my father's side, but on my mother's side, she became a very nasty person. Had a massive impact on my mental health. She'd ignore me for days on end, which obviously made me felt like I'd done something wrong. So days would go and I'd just not want to do stuff. I'd feel down all the time. The events and things that I used to love doing would now be tedious and I wouldn't want to be there.
Terrible time. Didn't know I was struggling. I just knew something wasn't right. I knew something, like I say, it wasn't right. Something was seriously wrong, but I didn't know what. But I just, due to the stigma at the time, I just carried on. And then after about 3-4 years into it, somebody said, "You've got depression." Then everything just clicked into place, and by which time I was coming out the other side, and I just managed to get through it myself without any help. But that's how it were back then.
How do you think it impacted your life then, having these struggles?
Really affected like the sort of opportunities and experiences I let myself have. I feel like there are probably times where I could have said yes to things and they may have been great. I've stopped myself from potentially having some of the best experiences of my life purely because saying yes was so scary.
At first, when I was at work with Iceland, where I worked for a couple of years, I had them quite often since GCSEs when my anxiety started, but I didn't get the help that I needed because they weren't that bad. But then slowly as time went on, they got worse and worse until to the point where I was made redundant at work, where it just piled on with all the pressure and all the anxiety of knowing that I won't have a job within a couple of weeks.
There was a lot of damage it did early on, at least to me, like just sort of friendships I had, because it does kind of just shut you off a bit from other people. And so I definitely did lose, I wouldn't say I've lost friends, I did manage to get them back, but I was very close to just cutting people off entirely from my life because of it.
It was during my GCSEs and my A levels. It took over 3 years to get it done, so it dragged on an awful lot, and it desperately affected my GCSEs. I didn't want to do them, and I did almost end up failing most of them if I hadn't have had some form of encouragement from my dad to get it done and not let it bother me.
It has changed my outlook on life totally. It's not very often you'll see me down because I've been down, and it just makes you look at life differently. and it does. I like to think I'm a bit more cheerful than what I probably used to be. I don't take things too seriously that I don't need to. Try not to let things get me down that you can't change, and just carry on with life as best you can.
Do you think that these experiences change you as a person, or the way that you live in any way?
I think having had those experiences, me now, like I am making like a conscious effort to try and sort of be more outgoing. Really try and get those experiences that perhaps I missed back then. Like I don't want to miss out on more experiences. Like I think it really has, through like reflection, especially over like the last 2 years, I feel like looking back at where I was sort of sixth form kind of time, I'm like, you know, I don't want to be back there. I want to grow, I want to move on, I want to become someone who has stories to tell.
When I was first diagnosed with them, I was quite closed off, so I didn't use my phone at all. I only used it for YouTube because I didn't want to look at Twitter or get in contact with any friends. I watched a lot of Netflix. Over the months, and I've been getting better and better with becoming myself and knowing that these thoughts don't define me. They're just thoughts that are in my head, and my anxiety doesn't define me now. So I'm getting more used to going out and being with friends and doing things instead of locking myself away.
I'd say it's definitely changed how I act, and how I act with other people mainly. I'm definitely a lot more sort of careful with them because I know how it feels to feel like the way I do. So I don't want anyone else to feel that way either. It's part of who I am, for better or for worse. And it's no different to just like feeling hungry or just feeling a bit like tired every now and then.
It changed me as a person because I learned a lot about myself in that time. Sounds rather cliche, but obviously I learned about what I can deal with and how I deal with it. And I think it's also changed me now because I have more of an understanding that with myself having experienced it. Now I have more of an understanding of what other people might be going through, so that I'm more able to understand their situation and try and help if possible. It's definitely made me a stronger person, and I think it's definitely made who I am today. If I don't think it would have happened, I don't think I'd be as outgoing and as open as I am now.
If anybody's struggling, I mean, my own personal experience was due to my partner leaving. So if I know one of my friends is going through something similar, I always check up on them, and I do. I always will do, always have done, always will do. Just try and make sure that they're not suffering like what I did, because I never ever want to go through that again, and I don't want to see anybody I know go through that again.
So in your opinion then, how do you get out of any bad mindset that you set yourself in?
It's always the times where you talk to someone that it just makes it so much better. Like the last time I had sort of a really big low, I just had like a 2-hour FaceTime with my friend, and you know, you hit hang up and you're like, I feel so much better than I did before.
I just go and have fun, like go adventure places, go to pubs, go to shopping, etc., instead of locking myself inside like I used to do.
If it's not that intense, distract yourself from it, usually by something which like doesn't let your mind wander. So if it's something like anxiety, do maths, try to name as many like countries as you can, because you'll be focusing on that instead of what's actually going wrong. For depression, I used to listen to music, I made playlists about certain things, certain films and all that.
During all of it, I did used to enjoy cycling. I used to go for hours on end. I'd be out for a full day cycling, just taking in the views, being alone with my thoughts and a bit of music, and that really helped me. I do enjoy editing or playing video games, or even making little miniature models and then not doing all with them, but just making them to say, look, I've achieved something today, I've done it.
You try and have a quiet word with yourself, take a good look around you and see what you can do to, you know, bring yourself out of it, drag yourself out of it sometimes if need be, cheer yourself up, go do something, exercise, what a massive help to me. I remember when I was struggling, I used to go play football, and for that hour, all my problems seemed to go away. The issues, it weren't there, and that helps.
It can be fundamental things like just taking a step back and looking at self-help around, what's your sleep like? What's your eating like? Are you getting fresh air, reasonable amount of exercise? Are you able to relax? Just looking at the bare bones, the foundations of what is going to keep you in as reasonable place as possible. And if you can focus on getting those basics right, then you stand a good chance of trying to improve your mood, perhaps. Maybe you might look at some self-help around, a lot of people really enjoy mindfulness meditation. There's lots of apps and website resources that can really help you gain relief from maybe stressful or anxiety symptoms, just reduce that right down. Maybe being active or joining groups that can really help with improving low mood, getting you out and about, connecting with people.
In your opinion, would you recommend professional help if anyone's struggling?
I feel like, yeah. I've never actually used professional help. I've thought about it. I think there was a time sort of last year where I was a bit low and I thought about it, but then I didn't then. I got all the way to like signing up for it and then I didn't press yes. I don't know if having pressed yes would I be even in an even better place than I am now. I feel like if it's there, you should probably use it. I know from my experience, I know how scary it is to say yes, please help me. It is terrifying. But I think if you can get over that final hurdle, the benefits to you will just be massive.
I 100% recommend that you go get professional help. Either that's from friends who might help to calm you down, your family, or your local GP. Because if you go to your local GP like I did, they will put you through to the people that will help you. They won't just say, take these medications even if you don't need them. They will put you through to the right people. They will test you on if you need any medication, any psychiatric help, any therapy. And if you go get this help, it will massively increase your mental health, because once you understand that you're not the only one going through this sort of thing, it helps 100%. It did with me. It might not do with everyone, but I'm pretty sure that with 95% of people, getting the professional help that you need will make your mindset a lot easier, because you will know that you're not the only person going through these issues or situations.
100% definitely. I think, like we were talking about earlier on, there is a stigma, and I think people do need to go seek professional help, because I've had counselling, I've spoke to people, and it has generally made such a massive difference than sitting at home with my thoughts alone and then letting them get on top of me. So definitely 100% see someone if you need to.
They can hopefully feel as free as possible to speak, and that talking freely can firstly often release a lot of pressure. It also might be the first time that person has heard themselves and really identifies what's going on. A professional may have access to further resources or support, may help provide clarity as to what's going on and what the next steps might be. It might be that those around this individual may be part of the problem. So again, having a space to talk can help get that perspective and find out what happens next or where to go from now.
The struggles surrounding men's mental health may be challenging. However, there are ways to overcome these from getting worse, or to manage them. On their website, Royal College of Psychiatrics propose that there are 10 ways in order to get your life back on track. These are: 1. Talk to someone. This is the most important thing that you can do, as it will relieve a lot of pressure off your shoulders and make you feel a lot better. 2. Keeping active. This is the most simple thing that you can do in order to help you feel better. This is because it will also keep you physically fit, but also keep you distracted from whatever you are dealing with. 3. Eat properly.
It's important to eat well when you're feeling down. This is so you get the right nutrients into your system and so you don't lose or put on too much weight during this phase.
4. Avoid drugs or alcohol. Men typically see these substances as a way of escapism from their real life. Short term, this may feel good. However, in the long run, it won't do any justice for you, so avoid these at all costs. 5. Check your lifestyle. It's key not to put pressure on yourself when you're going through a bad mind frame, as stress can make you feel worse. To combat this, if you have a major task, split this up into more realistic goals and aims so that they are more easily achievable. This way, you will feel better about yourself when you accomplish these goals. 6. Take a break. It's important to take a break when you feel down. If life feels as though it's getting out of hand, step back and take a break. It is the most important thing that you could do for yourself. Breaking the normal cycle is very beneficial for you, as it can help reset your mind. 7. Read about mental health. There are plenty of books and websites out there that have the right information for you. Read about the condition, read about what you are going through, and then learn about how you can self-help yourself in order to get better. 8. Don't get upset if you can't sleep. Sometimes it can feel very difficult to sleep when you are not feeling your usual self. So try doing something more relaxing before you go to sleep. This could be watching television, reading, yoga, art, etc. to help you feel more ready for bed. 9. Do something you like. Always make time for yourself and something that you enjoy in order to keep your mood up and feeling good about yourself. 10. Join a support group. Sometimes it can be difficult giving yourself support when you're not feeling right yourself. These groups are designed to give you the support that you need and when you need it. It has other members that are in the same situation as you, so they have similar experience. If you use some of these on a regular basis, you will feel much better about yourself. It will help you overall and help you both mentally and physically. From the research I have found and talking to my guests, I have concluded that there needs to be a mix of changes that needs to occur. The two main important ones are
Educational and societal.
educational. Education on the subject as a whole is definitely required within schools. Like sex education taught within schools to school children, mental health should also be taught. There needs to be a class that works directly with mental health and let them know it is okay to feel a different way and not feel okay. It also needs to let students know how to conquer these issues and let them know that there is help available if needed. As well as this, letting teenage boys know that it is okay to show their emotions and that it is not weak to do so, and that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. Societal. Within society, the stigma surrounding men showing their feelings is slowly being dismantled. The stigma is slowly dying. For example, in the 50s and 60s where it was frowned upon to show any sign of struggle. Now, men are becoming more open to talking about their feelings, but not fast enough. As a society, we need to encourage men to open up more about their struggles and to let them know that it is okay to speak about their feelings openly. There have been a few successful campaigns with charities trying to target men in other ways. An example of this is the charity Mind, who have partnered with the English Football Association to help combat male suicide and depression. With football being a mainly male-dominant sport, supporters will feel a more direct link to that charity. If men feel as though they are more open and more comfortable talking about their struggles, it will reduce the bad statistics and greatly show that the stigma surrounding men's mental health is dying. It's important to understand that it is human to feel low and down sometimes. No one can feel good about themselves all the time. Darker days are normal. But just remember that you are not the only one. In times where it feels like you are at your worst and that you are at your lowest point, there will always people who are in the same situation as you. They know what you're going through and they can relate to your struggle. Things will get better with the right time and support.